the voice of health, freedom, and liberty, Robert Scott Bell.
Evidently, there's a story. It broke yesterday, and it made big news everywhere. All the cable shows and they're all wanting to know, hey, should parents lose custody of super obese kids? Wow, very interesting. Now, how many reasons do you want to take kids away from their parents? Now, if you really talk about, and we've talked about the violability, if you will, of the state into the sanctity of not only of marriage, but of children, because the state claims ownership of children. And go back to listen to some of my older archives to catch up on this story. I can just give you a brief review. But the fact is, if you ask permission of the government to marry, of course, that's an absurd notion unless you recognize, going back to the 14th Amendment and everything else associated with the alteration of citizenship, that the reason for licensure, for licensing people to marry, was not for any other reason than to prevent white people from marrying black people. I'm just going to put it very... I don't even like talking about it. It's so disgusting. But basically at a time with lack of consciousness that was existing in that time, after the so-called Civil War, which was not civil, it was very uncivil, there was a point in time where the government said, hey, no, we can't have white people marrying black people. And, of course, other minorities as such. That was the whole concept of where licensure was born out. Prior to that, it was always about your church or whatever. In the Bible, you declare it even if you didn't have a church officially. It wasn't any 501c3 churches. I mean, of course churches were not for profit. Of course churches were not taxable. I mean, it was ridiculous. They were religious institutions. They had nothing to do with the government. And now, of course, everybody thinks they have to get a license to get married. Oh, I have to get permission to get married. Why? Did you ever ask why? Oh, no, it's just the way it's been done, hasn't it? No, it hasn't been. No, you used to record it in your Bible. Really? And then on top of that, you think that your kid's not alive until you get a birth certificate. Oh, yeah, till my kid's stamped on the forehead, sanctioned by the state for being alive, he's not alive. Of course, another absurdity. We ask for permission where none is required because we've been programmed. We've been manipulated. We've been hoodwinked. We've been hypnotized. And that's why, this is the mass deprogramming, If this is a church, it's my healing ministry. It's non-denominational. Everybody is welcome. You don't violate anybody else's rights by participating. But when you ask permission of government, of course, they get to throw down the rules. And they often forget to tell you that there are any rules or strings attached. It's kind of like, we're giving you permission. And we're just nice about it. We just want to give you permission to get married. Well, why do I need permission? Don't worry about it. We just wanted to give you permission. Just sign along here. That's all right. Fruits of the marriage, property of the state. Never mind that clause. We're going to hide that somewhere else. And so in this case, when they talk about, we'll just take your super obese kids from you because we don't like the way you're raising them, that really becomes a red herring argument or something now, straw man argument. What do you say? Something that's not even where we should be arguing. It's like, where did the state get permission, as I said, to claim ownership of your child? Now, I would say, okay, it's probably not a good idea to have a super obese child, however they define it, because there are going to be health problems associated with it. But is it an imminent life and death threat? I mean, tomorrow are they going to drop dead? Not likely. But then again, you could have somebody that's not super obese. An unseen vascular inflammation event can create a heart attack in someone who you say, well, how'd that person get a heart attack? You've seen some of these thin runners die, like going back to Jim Fixx. Was that in the 70s or the early 80s? I don't even remember. But, of course, we talk about mineral deficiencies even in skinny people. So it may be that a super obese person has plenty of extra to go by or go with. But at the same point, another excuse to say, hey, your kids are not your kids, right? We can't have you, caring for your kid if they're super obese. What are you feeding them? Now, if we're going to lay that litmus on parents, then most children, I could argue, don't belong with their parents, right? Because they're vaccinating them. That's medical experimentation, right? They're loading them up with antibiotics, whether they need them or not. They're feeding them diet sodas. They're giving them artificial colorings, flavorings. Who knows what else they're giving them?